Hey there, in this video I'll guide you through how to choose the correct resize method for wall art mockups. We'll explore all the resizing methods available in Bulk Mockup, 7 core methods, plus some advanced options that take things to the next level. I know it might sound like a lot, but don't worry. I'll start simple, break down the basics, and walk you through each method step by step. By the end, you'll know exactly which resize method works best for your project. To help you master design resizing, we'll start with the fundamentals by discussing basic template creation and identifying what typically needs to be resized. From there, we'll explore all essential resizing techniques, and then we'll introduce the fastest resizing method, saving an in-depth discussion of it for later in the video. From there, we'll take things further with advanced resizing options that enhance the basic methods. After that, we'll cover the 3 key cases where resizing isn't necessary, and conclude by exploring practical use cases that will help you apply these techniques effectively. Let's get started. First thing first, resizing isn't a one-size-fits-all process. Different projects and designs often require different approaches. This brings us to a key question. Why do we need multiple resize methods, and what exactly are we resizing? The answer is simple. The type of mockup template and design file you're working with determines the resize method that's most suitable. Each method is tailored to handle specific scenarios, ensuring your mockups turn out just right for your project's needs. When it comes to resizing, it's important to understand what we're actually working with. Let me show you the basics, as this is the foundation everyone needs to know. To begin, I'll create a new document. I'm setting it to 2000 by 2000 pixels with a resolution of 72 ppi, which gives us the space we'll be working with. Next, create a shape layer. To do that, select the rectangle shape tool, then click on anywhere on the canvas. This will pop up. Now insert the size of shape layer. I will make a 1500 by 1500 pixel shape layer. Click OK. Now change the color of the background to purple to make it stand out. To do that, scroll and click on the background color and set it to purple color. Select the background layer. While holding on Shift, click on Backspace on your keyboard. This will fill it with the background color. Next, convert your rectangular-shaped layer to a smart object. To do that, right-click on the layer and click on Convert to Smart Object. Smart objects are independent layers that keep their own properties, be it their size, aspect ratio, and any other effects, even when they're part of a larger design template. For example, when I right-click on this smart object and choose Edit Content, it opens up to reveal its actual size, which is 1500 by 1500 pixels, and it also contains our shape layer as it is. I'm going to rearrange my workspace a bit to make it easier for you to follow. Remember that the ones on your right will be the smart object's content, and the ones on the left will be the main document. Now you'll see how a smart object works. When I adjust something on the right, which is the Smart Object tab, and the Save the Changes by clicking Ctrl+S, you'll immediately see how the main document changes on the left. Here's where resizing comes into play. When we resize something in Bulk Mockup, it's always in reference to the Smart Object layer. Let me show you what I mean. When I press Ctrl+T to resize the Smart Object, let me move it outside the canvas area of the Smart Object layer. As you can see, all adjustments are restricted to its bounding box. This means the resizing will stay within the Smart Object's defined area and won't extend beyond its limits. This relationship between the Smart Object layer and the canvas is the key here. Whether the Smart Object is smaller, larger, or the same size as the canvas, it doesn't matter. The resizing always happens in relation to the Smart Object layer. So as you work on a design file or artwork, you're essentially resizing it based on this layer. Once you understand this concept, resizing in your projects becomes much more simple. Let's move on to the essential design resizing methods you'll need. In general, there are 7 resize methods to choose from: Fill Canvas or Stretch, Fit to Canvas without cropping, Fit Canvas cropping the extra, Constrain by height, Constrain by width, Do not resize, and Replace content. When working with wall art mockup templates, the most commonly used resize methods are the top 3: Fill Canvas or Stretch, and Fit to Canvas without cropping. Additionally, Fill Canvas with cropping the extra is another useful option. We'll go through each of these methods step by step, see how they work, and understand the results they produce. Before we dive into the resize methods, let's discuss the main challenge when working with wall art templates: the aspect ratio. The aspect ratio refers to the relationship between the width and height of the blank space where your artwork will go. In most cases, the aspect ratio of the blank space in the template won't match the aspect ratio of your design or artwork. This mismatch creates the need for resizing, which is why understanding resize methods is crucial. To resize, the first step is identifying the Smart Object layer where the design will be placed. Right-click on the Smart Object layer, choose Edit Contents, and it will open in a new tab. This is where the resizing happens. I want to note to you that because I want to thoroughly explain each resize method of Bulk Mockup, all you see after are the manual processes that our plugin will do for you with much shorter time. For example, if we place a design with a mismatched aspect ratio into the template, the first resize method, Fill Canvas or Stretch, will stretch the design to fill the canvas, even if it distorts the artwork. While this method fills the space, it changes the proportions of the design. Using the same design, I'll show you another option, which is Fit to Canvas Cropping the Extra. This method places the design so it fits the canvas while cropping any excess. It adjusts the height or width to match the canvas dimensions without leaving negative space, but some parts of the design may be cropped out. Then there's Fit to Canvas Without Cropping. Here you can see that it resizes the design to fit within the canvas without cutting anything off. However, this method may leave negative space at the edges, since the proportions are maintained. For wall art templates, canvas templates, or frame templates, the most commonly used methods are Fill Canvas or Stretch and Fit to Canvas, cropping the extra. These two methods handle the majority of use cases, offering flexibility depending on whether you want to preserve proportions or ensure the canvas is completely filled. With these methods, you can tackle resizing efficiently for 90% of your mockup projects. But keep in mind that our goal here is to thoroughly understand all the resize methods available. We'll take a closer look at each one to see how they function and when to use them. Let's start with one of the most commonly used methods, constraint by height. This approach ensures that the design adjusts to fill the height of the canvas while maintaining its proportions. For example, if you're working with a rectangular design in a portrait orientation, it will stretch to touch the top and bottom of the canvas. However, since the width isn't adjusted, negative spaces will appear on the sides of the canvas. As you can see on the screen, it will still stretch vertically to meet the top and bottom edges of the canvas, without extending beyond those boundaries. This leaves visible negative spaces on the left and right. Visually, the design looks centered vertically, but doesn't fill the entire width of the canvas. Now, from what we discussed earlier, let's compare this to Fit to Canvas Cropping the Extra. When using this method, it doesn't specifically control the height or the width of the design. Instead, it expands proportionally to fill the canvas as much as possible. This means it can adjust in either direction, height or width, depending on the aspect ratio of the design compared to the canvas. On the other hand, constraint by width works in the opposite way. The design is scaled to fit the width of the canvas while keeping its proportions intact. For instance, if you place a rectangular design using this method, it will fill the canvas horizontally, but the height won't stretch. This leaves negative spaces along the top and bottom edges of the canvas. Both constraint by height and constraint by width are useful for preserving the proportions of a design while adapting it to fit within specific constraints of the template. These methods are particularly helpful when working with templates where maintaining the aspect ratio is more important than filling the entire canvas. We'll also cover the Do Not Resize and Replace Content methods, but while I'm walking you through the other methods, remember this. Among all of those, Replace Content stands out as the fastest resize method available. If you're looking to streamline your workflow and save time, this method is an excellent option to consider. Understanding how this method works can actually bring significant improvements to your efficiency, especially when managing large-scale mockup projects. I'll explain this method in detail, building on the basic concepts we've already covered. So, make sure to stay with me until the end of this video. Now, before getting into those, let's focus first on some advanced features that can enhance the 5 resizing method we've already covered. If you go to the settings and select the design layer, you'll notice several advanced options. These features allow you to build on the basic resize methods, making them more powerful and versatile. One thing to keep in mind here is that all resizing is done with reference to the center point by default. This means any adjustments will originate from the center, unless you specify a different alignment using the settings bar. We've already gone through the 5 basic resize methods in detail and demonstrated how they work. Now these advanced resize options come into play to further refine those methods. For example, they allow you to customize the behavior of resizing, improving flexibility based on your specific needs. It's important to note that these advanced features only apply to the first 5 resize methods. While there are 7 resize methods in total, the last 2 are unique and will be discussed in detail later. For now, keep in mind that the 5 basic resize methods can be enhanced with these advanced settings to give you more control and precision in your mockup projects. Let's start with the scaling feature, starting with the Scale to option. Here I have already selected Fit to Canvas, cropping the extra as our resize method. Right now the design is at 100%, meaning it completely fills the canvas according to the crop settings, and I'll change the scale to 90%. As you can see on the screen, the design shrinks proportionally, leaving equal negative space around all sides. If I adjust it further to 80%, the design becomes even smaller, maintaining the proportions while leaving more space around it. This scaling percentage gives you precise control over how much of the canvas the design occupies. Next, let's talk about alignment. By default, resizing happens from the center of the canvas. But what if we want the design to resize from the top or a corner? Let me show you how. In the settings, you'll see 9 anchor points. If I select the top anchor point, resizing will now occur from the top of the canvas instead of the center. Watch as the design adjusts its placement based on this new alignment. This flexibility is great for fine-tuning the layout of your design. From there, let's move on to Resize to guides and Align to guides. This is especially useful when you want to restrict resizing to a specific area of the canvas. For this to work, the Smart Object layer needs exactly 4 guides. Let me show you how to set this up. Here I'll add 4 guides, 2 horizontal and 2 vertical, to define the boundaries. It's important to note that the units in Photoshop's preferences must be set to pixels for this feature to work. To check that, you just need to right-click to the ruler here. As you see, it's set to pixels. If you don't see the ruler, just press Ctrl+R. With the Resize to Guides and Align to Guides option, it will work depending on the resize method. You can see here is the Fill Canvas/Stretch method. So when I place the design, it will be adjusted to fit with 4 guides. If the pixels on the right side meet the weight of your physical guides, you can create your shape to fit with 4 guides. Notice how the resizing is confined to this smaller area, treating it as the new canvas. This is particularly helpful when you need precise control over where your design is placed and resized. This method might not be something you use for every project, like wall art, but it's a powerful tool for specialized templates. It allows you to work with specific areas of the canvas without affecting the entire design, giving you more control over your mockups. When you utilize these advanced features, scaling, anchor points, and guides, you can enhance the 5 basic resize methods to handle a wide range of design scenarios. These tools provide flexibility and precision, ensuring your designs look polished and professional. Remember what I mentioned earlier about the last 2 methods? These methods have a unique purpose, and we'll begin by taking a closer look at the Do No Resize option in Bulk Mockup to understand how it behaves in different scenarios. This method is unique because it doesn't change the size of your design file. Instead, it places the design exactly as it is, centered within the Smart Object layer, and depends on the size of your design. As you can see, I have prepared 3 designs in different sizes here, designed to be bigger, fit, and smaller than Smart Object size. I'll go to Image/Canvas size, to show you the size of this smart object layer. As you can see, their sizes are very different. It measures 2164 by 3246 pixels, while the design file is 632 by 888 pixels. As I place the design, notice how it sits in the center of the canvas, leaving negative spaces around it. No resizing is applied, so the design remains at its original size. This is exactly what Do No Resize does. It preserves the size and aspect ratio of the design file without trying to fill the canvas. Now let's try a design file that matches the dimensions of the smart object layer. I've resized the design to 2164 by 3246 pixels to ensure it's the same size as the layer. Watch as I place it. This time the design fits perfectly within the layer. There are no gaps, no cropping, and the design aligns seamlessly with the edges. This is the ideal scenario when your design and canvas dimensions are already aligned. But what if this design, the other design we have, is much larger? This design is not exactly the same size, but it's important to note that it is larger than the target size, though the aspect ratio is different. When this happens, the design will be placed at the center of the canvas, leaving negative spaces on the top and bottom. The aspect ratio will be preserved, but the design will be confined and fit within the canvas while avoiding cropping the extra parts. This is the outcome when we have a design file that exceeds the size of the canvas, ensuring it maintains its proportions while fitting within the available space. Another important consideration is PPI, or pixels per inch. I prepared two photos of the same size but with different PPI. I'll show you that by going to image/image size. The first photo is 900 by 1250 pixels at 72 PPI, and the next photo is the same size but with a higher PPI of 300. When these designs are placed using the Do Not Resize method, they will look completely different, like this. A design with 300 PPI will look many times smaller because at 900 by 1250, it is only about 3.75 inches wide. With 72 PPI, it would be 15.63 inches wide. Overall, the Do Not Resize method is great for preserving the original size and aspect ratio of your design file. However, it's important to understand how it behaves in different situations. Also, as mentioned, always consider the dimensions and PPI of your design file in relation to the smart object layer. These factors can help you effectively use Do Not Resize to maintain the integrity of your designs while placing them in your mockups. Earlier I mentioned that replace content is the fastest resize method in Bulk Mockup, a real game changer for speeding up your workflow. But how exactly does it work, and what makes it so efficient compared to the other methods? This method can save you significant time, especially when working on large-scale mockup projects. Let's break it down step by step and see why it stands out as the fastest and most efficient option available. In the other resize methods we've covered, Bulk Mockup opens the template, navigates to the smart object layer, opens it up in a new tab, and then places the design manually. However, replace content skips all these steps. When you right-click on the smart object layer and select Replace Content, you can directly replace the design file without opening the smart object. This saves time by eliminating the usual steps of editing the smart object and placing the design inside. However, there's one critical thing to keep in mind. The dimensions of the smart object layer must exactly match the dimensions of all your design files or artwork. If you remember from earlier, we saw that the size of this smart object layer is 1308 by 1752. So if we place this bigger design with 2500 by 2877 pixels, the design is improperly placed because the pixel values don't align. It will look larger than the old one. On the other hand, with a smaller design, it will leave many negative spaces like this. This is why it's crucial to ensure that all your design matches the smart object dimensions exactly before using Replace Content. That's all about the resize methods. Now let's talk about creating smart object layers that maintain the quality of your designs. If the smart object layer is too small, placing a larger artwork will compress the details, leading to a noticeable loss of quality. With the smart object layer here, it has just a few dozen pixels for both horizontal and vertical. So, If I place a high-resolution design into a low-resolution smart object, it becomes pixelated. To avoid this issue, always create your smart object layers with sufficient resolution. A good practice is to create a rectangle as big as your design file size. Let it go beyond the canvas dimension. Convert it to a smart object and then scale it down to the desired size to fit within the canvas. This ensures that resizing doesn't degrade the quality of the design and keeps your mockups looking professional. Now let's explore how different templates may require specific resize methods. Consider a scenario where the template includes a mat board with two frame options, one with a border and one without. Depending on the look you want, you can enable or disable the appropriate layer to achieve your desired result. Here's the key to working with such templates. Always check the Smart Object layer by pressing Ctrl+T. This shows the bounding box, helping you understand how the resizing will be applied. For this type of template, methods like Fill Canvas Stretch or Fit to Canvas without cropping work best, as they eliminate negative spaces and fit the artwork perfectly within the frame. Some templates might also include oblique angles or nested smart objects, which can seem complex at first. Don't worry, let me show you how to handle these scenarios. For oblique angles, remember that the perspective is applied at the template level, not within the smart object itself. When I right-click and select Edit Contents, the smart object opens in its original, front-facing orientation. This is where resizing should happen for the most accurate results. For nested smart objects, where one smart object contains another smart object, you can see, when I right-click, choose Edit Content, unlike the previous case, the smart object layer with one oblique angle opens to another oblique angle. Remember that we are only working with smart object layers whose content are front-facing orientations, so you can see inside this is another smart object layer. Right-click and choose Edit Content again, you will see its original. Now you can change your design, click Save and close it. Repeat again, and you will get the product like you want. In order for Bulk Mockup to work with such nested smart objects, in addition to renaming the outermost smart object layer to @design like this, you also need to rename the inner smart object layer to @nested. Doing this ensures that Bulk Mockup will go deep into the entire smart object and perform the same process as I just did manually for you, but in much faster time. If you'll ask me what is the best resize method, the answer depends on your specific project. In most cases of wall art mockups, Fill Canvas Stretch or Fit to Canvas, cropping the extra, are ideal. They ensure that the design fits the canvas without leaving negative spaces or compromising proportions. For more complex scenarios like nested smart objects or templates with unique perspectives, Bulk Mockup provides flexible tools to handle them effectively. It is important to understand the behavior of each resize method and check the smart object setup so that you can create mockups that are both accurate and visually appealing. That wraps up our guide on choosing the correct resize method for wall art. We hope this tutorial has given you the tools and confidence to select the right resize method for your work. Whether you're dealing with framed art, wrapped canvases, or templates with complex layers, these techniques can help you streamline your workflow and elevate your designs. If you have any questions or need further assistance, feel free to reach out by emailing us on support@bulkmockup.com or visiting www.bulkmockup.com.